It, to me, feels like somebody just created an incline and we are having to put more effort into the things that previously didn't take so much effort. And so the imagery for me is like, okay, so we're encountering this mountain. Menopause is what I call it. I kind of see it actually like a mountain range, not just like a single short mountain, but a range. And that the climb really for all of us is mandatory. It is this season of life, sort of like we all go through it. Puberty. This is another season where we go through, and we are going to meet it with different preparation, different vulnerabilities, different strengths. What I have come to see is that the mountain reveals us, and sometimes it reveals vulnerabilities and even strengths that we perhaps were not even aware of.
Welcome back to the Daily Surrender. I'm Jen Ragazzo, your host, and I am really excited about today's conversation with a very special guest, my dear friend and colleague, Linda Petursdottir. She is a coach. She's been coaching in the women's health space for nearly 2 decades. And Linda herself is in the midst of midlife, and she has a very special passion for helping women through the transition of what she refers to as menopause. We're going to learn in today's episode all about menopause and why she uses that brilliant analogy. Menopause is often talked about as something that we have to just get through or we need to manage. But the conversation that I'm having today with Linda, which is a follow-up to the previous few episodes we've been having around midlife specifically, is a conversation that opens up menopause, or this entrance into menopause, as being more of a mandatory climb, and one that isn't just about hormones or hot flashes or mood swings or brain fog and getting through all of that and managing our symptoms, but instead about listening to the deeper rumblings beneath the surface. Many of us enter the season and we have awareness. We start to have awareness as to where we are and what is happening in our body. And we've got some tools. We're supporting our body well. And in this conversation, you'll hear how Linda shares her own journey as a functional medicine health coach coming into menopause, because she had all the tools. So we've got the tools. We've got an awareness of what's happening in our body. And yet something is feeling really incomplete, and there's more. And oftentimes there's more that takes us by surprise. And Linda and I want to have this conversation, colleague to colleague, sister to sister, fellow midlife women, with you, and help really guide you through the things that often surprise us women. Linda, again, she's a brilliant coach, the creator of the Menopause framework, and she also has a really cool story about being born and raised in Iceland, where mountains and weather really have this respect for nature, and how she even brings that into her work and the work that she does with women. So today's conversation is a conversation that is one where we're not talking about how to fix ourselves, but instead we're really learning how to listen more deeply, to trust ourselves again, and really reclaim the wise spiritual elder that midlife is inviting us to become. So without further ado, I am welcoming Linda to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Linda. I'm so excited that you're here. This is a conversation that you and I have been talking about having for a while now, because our offline conversations are just so rich and so good, and we could go on and on and on for hours, which we're not going to go on and on and on for hours today. We're going to distill it all down. But I really wanted to have you here because you are a fellow midlifer. You are a seeker of truth. You are a woman who's been in the trenches herself for decades, not only running a business very similar to mine. That's how you and I met at, or through, I should say, the School of Applied Functional Medicine a million years ago. But I really wanted to have you here, Linda, because you serve women in such a special way. And you also have your own behind the scenes because, again, you are going through the midlife, as you describe it, mandatory climb up Mount Menopause. So, can you share with us what you mean when you talk about Mount Menopause, and why is this metaphor to you something that really reflects what we're in and what we're going through?
Yeah. Thanks for the warm welcome. I'm so glad to be here finally.
Yes.
So, yeah, to me, the Mount Menopause metaphor is something that just appeared to me in one of my breathwork sessions as a beautiful imagery for this season of life where we're really encountering what most women experience as somewhat of an uphill climb, that it
Yep.
is suddenly life has shifted.
Yeah.
Things are getting harder in various different ways. Symptoms are showing up when they hadn't changed a thing. And it, to me, feels like somebody just created an incline and we are having to put more effort into the things that previously didn't take so much effort. And so the imagery for me is like, okay, so we're encountering this mountain. Mount Menopause is what I call it. I kind of see it actually like a mountain range, not just like a single short mountain, but a range. And that the climb really for all of us is mandatory. It
Yeah.
is this season of life, sort of like we all go through it, puberty.
Yep.
This is another season where we go through. And we are going to meet it with different preparation, different vulnerabilities, different strengths. Some of us may be aware of them, some of us may not be. But what I have come to see is that the mountain reveals us.
Mm.
And sometimes it reveals vulnerabilities and even strengths
Yeah.
that we perhaps were not even aware of.
Yeah.
And I think that the mountain offers various different paths, and we don't know all the paths on the mountains before we get there. It's not like we're handed a map that's going to say, okay, you're going to go this direction for 1 hour and then that direction and that path and then the yellow path and the blue path. It's going to just happen as we start climbing. It's just going to kind of start revealing itself
Yes.
as we're on the mountain. And that means that the incline in terms of difficulty is going to be different for different parts.
Yeah.
We're going to meet different stretches that are going to be treacherous, and
Mhm.
we're going to encounter weather patterns that we don't see where we're going, don't know if we're going in the right direction. So even though we're coming towards the mountain, knowing that, yeah, we're going to lose our hormones in the way that we had them before, and we're going to start seeing sort of this full body reconstruction, remodeling, essentially, because menopause is, it affects the entire body, every system of the body. And so I talk a lot about that with my clients, and we talk about symptoms and so forth. So it's great to meet the mountain with preparation, with
Mm.
understanding and awareness, but I think it's also just kind of embracing what's to come, even though it's somewhat unknown, knowing that you're going to encounter different things up there and that you're going to navigate as you go through. But you need to keep your eyes open. You need to keep yourself humble to
Yeah.
recognize that in my case, I don't know if you want me to go into sort of like how
Mm.
I met Mount Menopause and
Mhm.
how, like, again, it's the mandatory climb, but the how we navigate is somewhat optional. And so I came into
Mhm.
I kind of envision like a park. I'm driving and there's like a sign, Mount Menopause ahead, right?
Mhm.
And I see this mountain range and I'm like, all right, okay, here we go.
Mhm.
Well, I watched my mom go through
Yeah.
midlife and menopause in a way that she went from being a confident, outgoing, lively woman
Mhm.
to really, really losing her way
Yeah.
in midlife. not having the support, not having resources, not, it was at the time when women weren't talking about it. And there was a
Yep.
lot of this sort of like, oh, well, suck it up, right? Which we
Mhm.
know some of the previous generations had to deal with.
Yeah.
And so she proceeded to have real difficulty with mental health, her outlook on life, and started really losing her way. And I literally watched her just crash on Mount Menopause. And it became the beginning of the end in a way for her, where she's still alive, but she never
Recovered.
recovered.
Yeah.
And I told myself, that's never going to be me.
Mhm.
I'm in the health field. I know
Mhm.
all the ways in which we can prepare ourselves as women. I know all the solutions and the strategies to address the joint pain or frozen shoulder or the hormonal imbalance or the weight gain or the insulin resistance or, all the different things that come up as symptoms. And we know so much about
Yeah.
HRT now, and there's so much more education, amazing doctors that are out there that are really outspoken and knowledgeable, providing resources for us. So I, as a functional medicine health coach, was going into this thinking like, I got this. Like I'm resourced. I'm ready. Like, let's go.
And
And
then
then,
mhm.
and then I start feeling the incline. I'm okay. I got this. But suddenly things started getting harder and harder, but not in the ways that I expected,
Mhm.
not in those physical symptom type way. And so suddenly, about a year and a half ago, I hit a really, really rough patch. And I was like, wait, what? How can this be? Like I'm resourced, I'm knowledgeable, I'm aware, I know what's going on. Like, why am I feeling like I just like hit a incline that I am not sure I'm going to
Mm.
get through? And so it was it it sort of started, I started questioning what's going on. Like, did I just hit work burnout? Is this, am I falling into depression? Is it my hormones? Is it seasonal affective disorder? Like, what's going on? Like, why am I feeling like just absolutely like the rug was pulled out from underneath me, and I have no sense of direction with my life and with my next sort of phase in terms of how to help myself.
Yeah.
And I started throwing the kitchen sink at it.
Yeah. Oh my God. I can relate to absolutely everything that you are saying. Everything. Like you, Linda, I watched my mother stumble through menopause. She was around my age when I got married. And that year, she had been on birth control pills to regulate her periods because they were so heavy. She would just bleed through things. And then she had a D&C and stayed on birth control pills all through her 50s. So even when I would ask her, like, Mom, when did you actually go through menopause? She doesn't even really know because it was chemically supported with
Mm,
the birth control pill, which
mm,
you and I both know is not well supportive for women. We're
mhm.
depleting things like B6 and magnesium and zinc. And so you're really messing yourself up on top of what is already going on. And then my mom sunk into deep, dark clinical depression. I watched my mom struggle with depression all through her 50s, in and out of different types of treatment, suicidal. It scared the crap out of me. And like you, I was determined not to be like my mother. So when it started, and like you, Linda, I had all the tools.
Yeah,
We know what to do. We're
yeah.
very, very well researched and studied and educated, and we're supporting other people through the functional medicine lens. And we're doing all the things. And I started progesterone therapy very early in my 40s. As soon as I started to feel the progesterone decline and the tightness and the anxiety, and it was dinging out my sleep even the tiniest bit. But what you're talking about is next level. And I think what you're referring to, what we both experienced, really tends to be the things that surprise women the most once they really begin that climb of menopause. There's like, wait a second, like I've dialed in my diet. I'm hydrated, I'm remineralizing my body, I'm on hormone replacement therapy. What the hell is happening to me right now? Because I feel as if I'm sinking into a dark hole of depression. I don't even know if I like my career. I don't know if I like my husband. I don't know if I even want to live in this part of the world. Like all of those things
All those things.
start to flood
Yes.
us. And it can be really, really, really disconcerting when it starts. And I think that this is that transition for us as women where we start to recognize like, okay, we've got to go beyond the management of the physical symptoms. And this
Yep.
is really becoming a soul reckoning. And
Yes.
so can you speak to
Yes.
that? And I mean, you said a year and a half ago, it was really dark for you. And
Hmm.
again, you had all of this symptom management and the physiological support in place. And
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And so because it took me by such a surprise, and knowing like, wait, what am I missing? You like you talked about with all the tools, the supplements, the hormones, doing all the pieces that support this transition from physiological level. But again, it felt like it was deeper. And so I started thinking about, okay, so is this depression, right? Is
yeah.
this the dark depression that my mom started having? And knowing enough about mental health, yes, we talk about chemical imbalance and all that kind of stuff. But I also know that sometimes, sometimes these emotional, spiritual imbalances are actually a deeper calling that, hey, wait a minute, like, what if there's actually something underneath all of this that you haven't taken a look at? And I've always been one to be really open to therapy and to talk to people and coaches and all the things. And I started saying, like, okay, I think I need to go a step further and to really take my bag of shit
Yep.
and start dropping it out and sorting through things.
Yeah.
And so in doing that, it became about, okay, I need to talk to people that are really going to challenge me in that space.
Yep.
And I really, really believe, and I know for myself, that one of the ways in which I can get more honest with myself in terms of what I'm truly feeling,
Yeah.
because I think we can sometimes intellectually bypass up here.
Yeah.
Right.
We're
And like
great at
meaning
that.
making, like, oh, I
Yes.
got to make a meaning out of this. I got to figure this out. I got to come up with a solution. But what if the
Mhm.
solution is not here? Because trust me, I tried. I really, really tried. Throughout this whole time and before even all this kind of hit, I had found that I needed really to practice more embodiment practices, be involved in embodiment practices. So I have been doing a lot of different kind of breathwork techniques, some of which really take me into sort of like an altered state
Yep.
where I can really drop into my body and feel. It's almost like
Mhm.
I can been given that flashlight to just go in and sort of examine, like, okay,
Yeah.
what else is here? And every time I find nuggets of truth that I had not come up with up here. And I think part of it was like there's the protector system that
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
want to see it or hear it, right? But
Mhm.
when you go into the body, you can't hide behind the mind. You can't hide behind the intellect. The body reveals the truth. And
Yes,
so
it
through
does.
breath work, through different kinds of hypnosis that I did, through some plant medicine, through some really good coaching, I started coming closer and closer to all the kinds of things that are
Yeah.
in that bag of stuff, right? I'm not saying that I'm done,
Yep.
but I've made my way into some really, really juicy stuff. And it's not been
Mhm.
easy. But I actually, as much as I was trying to look out to see what are the things within my life, like you mentioned, like I said, oh, I have aging parents, my kids are about to go off, and I have midlife marriage and planning next chapters, and what does that look like, and what does the job look like, all the midlife kind of reconsidering
Yeah.
life. And I think that if we can really pause and just spend some more time in embodiment, whether that's in meditation, breath work, journaling, to just get quiet and
Yeah.
actually hear
Yeah.
and really listen to those deep, subtle messages that are trying to come through, they're not going to come through if we keep pushing and say on that mountain, like, I'm not going to give up. I'm just going to keep going, right? I'm just
Yep.
going to keep going, right?
Yep.
It's just not going to come through. And so I think I'm truly grateful that something in me allowed me to listen to, like, okay, Linda, you're going to just pause right here and you're going to find that little side ledge and you're going to go sit there
Mm.
and you're going to dial it down on work. You're going to give yourself some grace that you're going through a rough patch on menopause, and you're going to baby yourself a little bit. You're going to have self-compassion. You're going to give yourself a little time. And if that means you need to spend money on more support for emotional well-being, great, so be it. I feel like sometimes people kind of get stuck in like, oh, I can't spend money on this and that for supporting emotional well-being. But if it came to supporting a chronic illness treatment, like, of course.
Absolutely, Linda.
Right?
Absolutely.
But
Because
this is
our
like,
emotional health, in some weird way, it feels negotiable. And
right,
we can
right.
easily negotiate it out
Yes,
of being a priority for us because we have an underlying story that we should be able to do this by ourselves.
yes,
And we also may be carrying around shame that we even have any emotional needs, right? So us, especially women, do this. Oh, well, men do it too. But a lot of us midlife women, we're like, no, 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 no. And we're also really, really programmed to take care of everybody else. So when midlife confronts us with
yeah,
everything that you're speaking to, that actually becomes one of the confrontations. Like, do I actually deserve to take up space? Do I deserve to invest in myself, in
yes,
my emotional, mental, and spiritual well being, which is all wrapped up in one and does include the physical? Because as you and I both know, the physical is greatly impacted by our mental health, by our spiritual health, our nervous system, right? The body is going to speak, and it becomes impossible for us to silence all of those physical symptoms. And actually,
yeah,
I'm also, and I know you agree with me on this, I'm also going to claim that we don't want to silence all of the symptoms. We can throw the kitchen sink, as you said you started doing, and I've done, at ourselves. And if it actually worked, it would do us a disservice because we would miss the
yeah,
deeper invitation
right.
to really come home to ourselves, to connect with the true essence of who we are, to take a look at all the stuff that can not come with us as we move into this next season of being a wise elder. And on some
Yes,
previous podcast episodes that I've done recently on midlife and menopause, I've talked about menopause as being this invitation into a season of, like, we're being initiated into the season of being the leader, the wise elder. And
yeah,
we've earned our stripes to be there through our battle wounds and through our lived experience. You know, we don't need more letters by our name because we got an extra PhD in psychology. What we need to do is go within, go into our own belly of the whale. And something that I've heard you say a few times so far is be humble. It's being really, really, really humble, because humility is going to swing the door wide open to us being honest. And we have to be honest with ourselves. So if this means that we invest in ourselves, and whether like take off from work, lessen our client load or whatever. If you're working full-time, work part-time. If it means that we hire a coach, a therapist, a breathwork guide. You and I are both fans of MDMA and a guided therapeutic session. I was very blessed to hold space for you in that. And these tools really help us to get into the nitty-gritty so it doesn't have to be so hard. It's like we can take the emergency brake and put it down, so we're not driving up Mount Menopause with an emergency brake on while we're beating ourselves up and saying, oh my God, why can't I get this? Like you were saying, let's just get to the top of the hill. The journey itself is the destination. And the more that we learn how to be really present to it and to see all of the things that are coming our way as being for us, inviting us inward, inviting us to be right here, inviting us into our breath so that we can hear and we can stop missing what we're being invited to. Oh my gosh, life just starts to open up for us and expand and become more and more beautiful. And again, it doesn't mean that it's always an easy climb and that it doesn't have twists and turns and valleys and moments along the way where you've got to just even just sit and pause and just take a breath and look around at where you are. Yeah.
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 And so the way I kind of envisioned it as I picture myself sitting on that ledge is that it's much preparation and all and sort of understanding and awareness and all that I had. I had like I had a backpack with
Mm.
with invisible baggage,
Yeah.
invisible weight that I didn't see. It was my blind spot. I had no idea. I don't have specific large big T trauma events in my life that I could point to that I'm saying, I've got this and that I, too heavy kind of thing. But we all have little things that stack up on our heart over the years and over the decades, right? Sometimes we've been so busy, so caught up in raising a family and keeping the car on the road, right? That we so many things are left unresolved or unprocessed, right? So there's unprocessed grief, there's old patterns, there's limiting beliefs. And sometimes we just don't have time to look at that, or we choose not to, which oftentimes is even more the case, right? And so this is where I believe that during this time, that if we can give ourselves the grace, if we can find ourselves in a space of being humble, to recognize that maybe there is an opportunity here to learn something from looking in the mirror and really then digging into that bag to see what really is there. And in my case, when I really, really dug in, there are things that came out that I was like, wait, what? Me? Really? You know? And talk about being humble. That's incredibly humbling. And now I see how patterns of a fawn response in childhood became sort of the root for a codependency type behavior tree as I've grown up, and that those some of those codependency patterns have gone out in different directions through all the different branches, whether it's marriage or friendships or my work or my just all the different ways in which I operate my life. There's a tint from that old sort of coping mechanism from my childhood, right? And so it's sort of like, but wait, what? How can that be? But again, I think if we can just allow ourselves to be vulnerable enough to and have the courage to take a look at it, knowing that if we do, that can actually transform into an incredible strength. Because once we really process all of that, that can then become sort of like, wow, okay, here's something that I'm going to face and integrate, right? It's not about getting rid of it. It's part of our personality, because some of our whatever codependency, people pleasing skills or people pleasing tendencies in some other ways can be strengths as well. But how do we integrate into becoming a more authentic person that is showing up with all the things that she tried to hide in the past, right? We put on all these different masks to make sure that we're being approved and cherished and recognized and we achieve and da 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 da. But somehow down below, in my case, I know authenticity has always been a big value, and now I see like there was a blind spot within that where codependency didn't allow me to be fully authentic, to fully show myself in all the ways that I am, and to stop hiding parts of myself that I was ashamed of. And so I think the opportunity in midlife too is to show up as we are, to not care about whatever might be things that we didn't consider to be things we could be proud of, or we were scared to show the things that we might be ashamed of. And I think now, as women going through midlife, there's more of like, I am who I am, and I'm going to be who I am, because I'm going to stop abandoning myself, and I'm going to be authentic in the ways that I know myself to be. Because if I'm doing that, I'm rooting into my roots of my tree and nourishing the soil to rise up, to become that spiritual elder, and to leave behind the baggage and the bullshit and the things that we used to put up with. I think that's an opportunity, which I know a lot of women talk about, like, just don't want to put up with the BS anymore.
We don't want to put
And
up with
that's a
it. And
good
I
thing.
think that becomes that's the initial divine discontent that we start to feel as our symptoms are
Yes, the
inviting us to.
misalignments.
It's like,
Yeah.
I know for me, I desperately wanted to not care what other people thought of me. And I cared so much that if I were to ever make a mistake, it felt like an ego death to me. It felt horrible. So I avoided making mistakes by keeping myself small. And I only ever did things that I felt were really safe and that nobody would judge me for. And I hid a lot. And it doesn't even appear that I did that, because I think running your own business and being an entrepreneur, you put yourself out there. But I played it safe for a very long time until I couldn't play it safe any longer, because that divine discontent in me was calling me to what you're speaking to. I desperately wanted to not care what other people thought of me. I desperately wanted to stop people pleasing. It felt awful to me. It started to really feel toxic, because as my hormones were declining and I'm in this season where symptoms are getting louder and my neurotransmitters aren't supported in the same way, it became imperative that I learn how to not live with codependency and people pleasing and conflict avoiding, so that I could keep myself safe. And the only way to do that is everything that you're speaking to. It for me, and you and I know it. And that's why I wanted to really dive into this conversation here with our audience today, is because you and I are very well experienced, well educated women who've been working for well over a decade as coaches and health coaching and coaching through the functional medicine lens, and helping, probably between the two of us, like thousands and thousands of women. But if you do not take a look at the things that we're talking about here today in this conversation, you will not find the physical healing that you're desiring, and your soul will not find the divine content. You said you've to root deep down. I heard a little slip. You said to root deep down into your soul, and you said soil. And and I was like, ooh, I exactly. I was like,
Yes,
it really is both. I mean,
Yeah.
it's rooting deeply down into who we've been created to be. And midlife is this, it's like this hard line in the sand where it's like, no, we're so loved, we're so guided and so provided for, that our beautifully divinely designed bodies scream, no, you're not going to keep that up. And if you do, your symptoms will get louder. And for women like our mothers, unfortunately, I mean, they were just medicated. My mom was given a psychotropic cocktail of drugs and a little bit of talk therapy. And there wasn't this conversation that you and I are having here, unfortunately. But as women are living longer, we are living longer, and we are having advances in our understanding of women's health and menopause. And there's fierce women and men out there fighting for us and opening up this conversation and having this conversation. And it is a conversation that extends well beyond HRT. So what do you think are, Linda, some of the invisible vulnerabilities that start to show up for women in that midlife ascent? I know you and I have kind of named some of them because they've been the things that were our own invisible vulnerabilities that were like, hey, let's go take a look at it. But what do you see a lot of in the women that you work with?
As it relates to sort of like the physical realm that
Well,
are
it's the
showing up.
no. Let's actually, it's actually the metaphysical because they're the
Yeah.
underlying
Yeah.
players, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, you talked about the limiting beliefs and these
Hmm.
distorted constructs that a lot of us live with, and it could come
Yeah.
from programming in childhood. I mean, you know, very early in childhood, you learned to fawn to survive. I'm working with a client right now, and we did a journey the other day using MDMA so that because oh my gosh, her constructs were so thick, and she had such a wall of armor, and she couldn't get into it. And I caught something and in her journey because she said I grew up I didn't have I had a good life. I don't understand. Like my parents were loving people. I mean, they got pregnant with me at 19 and I was in an accident and I never really felt like I belonged because I was so different. And my dad got really sick when I was 2 and he was in the hospital for months and my mom was with him when I lived with my grandma. But I mean, I really didn't have any trauma. And I'm going, oh, really? Accident? And abandonment at a young age. So then you become anxiously attached and then you don't feel like you belong. So then you live your life feeling like you're wrong and you're not enough. Okay, you're right. You don't have anything that has shaped you, right? But and that leads to behavior for us as women. And I mean, I was a chronic people pleaser because I believed that my job was to make the people around me happy. And I believe a lot of that came from being very, very young. I'm the first of 4. My dad was a Vietnam veteran. He had PTSD. I'm sensitive. I pick up on emotions. I didn't like the discomfort of people's emotions. So I would try and fix them and make them happy, which then in turn gave me an external, you're a good girl, Jen. And so I really leaned in to trying my damnedest to be a good girl my whole life. So, what are some of the other things that you see in women that affect whether it affects them physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually?
Yeah. I think one of the things that is an example of something that hit me as well, which is that the nature of stress and how we think that stress only shows up as busy schedules, large amount of responsibility, big job, you're going all day long, you got multiple roles, multiple responsibilities, and you're just stressed out trying to keep it all going, right? And I think what hit me back in probably 2017 is that, and I've seen this also with other clients, is that I was working part-time-ish, right? Again, life was, I was raising 2 boys. Certainly life was full, but compared to what I was seeing around me and other clients and such in terms of their load, I was like, things are pretty easy for me, relatively easy. So why am I absolutely exhausted, right? What is going on? I started digging into all the functional medicine pieces. Sure, I found some gut issues that I addressed. I found some adrenal imbalances, right? And in hindsight, as I dug into it further, there was more to like, well, but hold on, like what's driving the sort of rock bottom cortisol? What's driving some of these gut infections? And I couldn't find it. I'm like, my life is pretty good, right? And it wasn't until more recently that I started understanding the emotional labor around being somebody who's codependent, who is always trying to hold up the nervous system of the entire family, right? And be the one that smooth things over and make sure that you catch all the balls that might be dropping and keeping the car on the road and staying hyper vigilant and making sure that you're somewhat over functioning to make sure the wheels don't go off, right? I think that's an understated weight that comes with that level of emotional labor when you're in that sort of level of codependent state for a lifetime. And to me, looking back, I see how that was a part of my sort of like hitting that state a year and a half ago where I just like felt like the rug was pulled out from underneath me, that it was a bit of an emotional burnout, right? Emotional labor burnout type thing. And that piece, I think, is very hard to describe to women who are wearing a badge of honor around their busyness and their achievements. And there's no way they're going to let go of all of that, right? Because that is like, they're responsible, they're showing up, they're doing the things, and they're da 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 da. And they're doing all the nutrition correct. They're doing all the supplements, and they're doing it all. They're checking all the boxes. And so what I see happening with that is, for example, with the gut infections or the revolving door of SIBO.
Yes, revolving door of SIBO. All
Right.
of the
And
things
we're like, we're
shove
doing the
down.
protocol, we're doing all the right diet, we're
Yes.
doing the supplements, we're not eating between meals, and we're making sure the migrating motor complex is coming through and doing its thing, and we're doing all the things for SIBO protocol. But she's going. There's no parasympathetic state
Yeah.
activated throughout the day. And I believe that that is one of the big shifts that needs to happen. One is like understanding that stress comes up in many different ways, including physiological through infections and such, but also through sort of psychological weight. But then also that there's this need to nurture the soil of the body, because we talk a lot about the vagus nerve and the nervous system being upstream from the physiology of the digestive system, right? And even upstream from the nervous system is our emotional well-being, right? And if the emotional well-being is in sort of turmoil, certainly that's going to trigger a sympathetic dominance most of the time, right? Which in turn is not going to allow for any healing. And this is where I think functional medicine is amazing. And I think there's a big room for honing in on the emotional landscape to make sure that there's an understanding that that is like up there and sort of like, or down there, however you look at it in terms of root cause, that the conductor of the whole thing starts with our emotional well-being. And then everything's downstream from there.
Yeah. Everything is downstream from there. Everything is downstream from there. One of the top symptoms that women have come to me with over the years, I've always asked for, what are your top 3? List all of them, but give me your top 3. And one of the top 3 most consistently is they'll write chronic fatigue. And I always like how they put chronic in front of it as if that's a diagnosis or a label, but that's how they feel. When they put that, that's how women feel. And I've been chronically fatigued. You've been chronically fatigued. And you're doing all the things and you don't understand why you still feel so fatigued. And it's everything that you're speaking to, Linda. If we're not taking a look at the emotional landscape, the body isn't going to step into a state of healing. And then we're doing more of a disservice because we're throwing supplement protocols at ourselves over and over and over again. And then when it doesn't work, or when it temporarily makes everything better, and then the microbiome shifts right back because we're living in a sympathetic dominant state and we're taking punches at our gut all the time with our thoughts, with the things that we're shoving down, with living as being the codependent people pleaser all of the time, then it's actually driving deeper this story that we're inherently broken, we can't be fixed, and that puts us into a state of victimhood. It doesn't put us into a state of empowerment, which is that of a creator. And so I know how I've practiced has changed so much over the years as I myself entered into the climb of Mount Menopause. I started about 5 years ago. It was about 5 years ago that I really started to shift right after I was entering into my own dark night of the soul. And my listeners know a lot of that story because I drip it in here and there throughout the podcast. But I started to really take a step back in how I was working. I was so heavy on the protocols and functional medicine testing because when it came into my life, it was just so exciting. It was really exciting that we could take a look at the bacteria that's causing the gut distress and then go after the bacteria itself and then rebuild the microbiome. And I knew to always talk to my clients and coach them on their lifestyle and making sure that they get good sleep and they have time for themselves. But I couldn't go with my clients to the places that they needed to go until I went there myself. So my practice and the way that I work with people has been growing and evolving and ever changing as I've been growing and evolving and ever changing. And you talked about embodiment a little bit about go on the podcast here and how important it was for you to really start to embody so that you could feel and hear those deep messages, the whispers of your soul, the divine tap on the shoulder, so you can take a look at those things. And I know for me, it's been very, very similar. So, can you share with us? Yeah, I mean, I think we've done a good job highlighting for our listeners here just all of the different patterns that menopause is revealing, like fawning and codependency and over-adaption and people-pleasing and all of that. That was just perceiving to keep us safe. But how are you also changing? Like, as you're showing up with women and working with women, I know that you're about to completely redo your program and develop a group program for women to walk through Mount Menopause, but you wanted to do that long before you actually were ready to take action. And something inside of you kept saying, not yet, Linda, not yet, Linda. But you're really feeling that fire and you're ready. So, whether it's how you have been changing and working with women or how you are going to be continuing to change. Yeah, share a little bit with us about that and what you know to be really, really, really true about the overall journey of, I like to call it healing. I think it's a mix of healing that comes from coming home to true essence of self and finding balance and joy and peace and all of the things that our souls are craving. But yeah.
Yeah, so you're saying, like, how am I envisioning going forth as I continue
Well, yeah,
on
I mean,
my journey?
absolutely. Well, it's going forward. And I just talked to the women who are listening here about the most important considerations in their overall well-being. What is most important after all? I think you've been coaching even longer than me. So you're going on like 17 years, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I will say that obviously all the things that I mentioned right at the top with regards to awareness and knowledge and sort of like understanding
Yeah.
the stage of life that you're in terms of
Hmm.
all the physiological changes, right?
Hmm.
We've covered some of the things about emotional, spiritual changes as well, and the ways in which we can hone in on that as well. I think it's incredibly important to have a team of people around you. So I sometimes talk about those of us who've had kids, some women are looking at preschool and nannies before the child is even born. They're making sure that they got the right doctor to deliver the baby. They're making sure that they got the pediatrician lined up and they've done 6 interviews, et cetera, right? So this is where I think it's incredibly important to have a team of specialists around us in this phase of life, and to not shy away from this. Goes back to sort of like, well, I'm not allowed to take up space to consume, resources and time. Well, actually, you know what, we need to look at this in the same way that we looked at it when we were having little babies, and we're going to set up a support system around them and making sure that they're in the right environment. So whether that's a PT or a therapist or a coach or a new gynecologist who specializes in midlife, it's somebody that's going to hone in on supporting us as we're navigating supporting older parents, and the team, right? We need to be resourced and supported in these ways. And I think that's important. And maybe we don't have them all of them all the time, but we cycle some in and out. And I think that's incredibly important, as well as the friendships, the sisterhood, right? So one of the ways in which I want to support women is to create more group opportunities, more in-person opportunities. We're doing so much online. And so I really am stepping more into trusting my intuition around what I believe can really help women in this space. And so this is where I want to bring on board more embodiment practices. So I, for one, have been doing a lot of 5 rhythm dancing, and I'm practicing sort of other modalities of conscious movements. So this is just another embodiment practice of being able to move our bodies and really feel into, where am I holding tightness? Where am I holding sorrow? Where am I carrying grief? Where am I carrying a sort of a grain of something that just wants to burst out and take off? And like, how do I feel into that? And how do I envision doing something with that? And for me, moving with that, whatever is alive in my body is what allows it to actually come out. Right? It doesn't just come out of my head, like it just doesn't. And so for me, conscious movement is a beautiful way of processing things that are going on in our life, celebrating things, and really getting curious and understanding the landscape of the emotions within the body. And emotions live in the body. We all know that body keeps the score,
It
right?
does. And trauma of any kind is laid
Stored
down.
in the
So it's
body.
stored in the body and it's laid
Right.
down somatically. So it
Yeah.
leaves the body somatically. So finding different embodiment practices and practices where we can move is really, really beneficial as we're moving through the season and up Mount
Exactly.
Menopause. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes,
Hmm.
because it needs to move. Things need to move out. And sometimes we need to shake things off.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes we need to shake our head and just like get out of our head and into our body, right? So to me, creating opportunities where women can kind of step outside of the intellectualizing a little bit, more into sisterhood, more into embodiment, more into nature, more into sort of reflecting and sitting in silence and all of that. And so this is where 2, 3 years ago, I created with my sister an opportunity for women to come to Iceland, which is where I'm from. Like, was born and raised in Iceland, and it's some gorgeous nature there. And people like to go to Iceland because it is beautiful. But we created a women's hiking and wellness retreat in Iceland where we take women out to nature, where they have an opportunity to be just away from it all, away from the daily responsibilities, to be in a remote area that is so raw and magnificent and powerful and creates so much grounding. They get an opportunity to walk in silence and to just be with nature and be with the elements. They get an opportunity to eat amazing food for a whole week and be just taken care of and be in sisterhood and all sorts of movement modalities and do hard things like having to wade through ice, like really, really cold rivers, and even do cold plunge and to walk across a sort of a narrow little ridge and all kinds of balancing type things and being a little bit out of your comfort zone. So I think that part of this season is also, as I said, it's self-compassion, giving yourself grace, and continuing to grow. Because as you are continuing the hike, you need to keep fortifying yourself to keep going, right? And sometimes that is with something new that's like, oh, this is something new and interesting, and we get a little excited about it, right? And so we only do those new things if we have the courage and we take the steps to go outside of our comfort zone. And so I think that is where, again, I feel like I want to push women a little bit further outside of that conventional realm of reading another book or, you know, intellectualizing the whole thing more and bringing into more playfulness, nature, experience, embodiment, sisterhood, that type of container. And so the retreat is, for me, has been sort of a pinnacle of my career of kind of starting to pivot away from just my sort of classic coaching, health, nutrition, wellness, functional medicine type coaching, to more experiential types things to help facilitate this growth. And I think I just want to emphasize playfulness. Okay. Because I too, I mean, books, whatever, right? Like I can get so in my head,
Yeah.
so intellectual, sort of thinking, analyzing, and thinking that I need to know more. I need to know more. And I believe there's been way too much credence given to cognitive intelligence and not enough to body intelligence and
Yeah,
to
body intelligence.
emotional intelligence.
Absolutely. I just read a report, though, the other day that said that research shows that the most intelligent people are the people who can think about their own thinking. So people, that's metacognition. So people who are able to introspect are actually the most intelligent people. And that is not something that our society reinforces or
Right.
encourages in the mainstream.
Right.
And everything that you're saying and that we're saying in this conversation actually points to that. So there's no reason, ladies, we can't start to strengthen our metacognition in midlife, which then leads us to growing and expanding and experiencing different things and doing hard things. I love how you take your women on the retreats into cold waters and cold plunging. The first time I cold plunged, I felt like such a badass on the other side of it. I mean, the high that I had, the amount of dopamine and oxytocin and serotonin that was released from that experience because I did something so hard, and yet it was just a few minutes of immersing myself in
Tolerating pain.
tolerating pain. I was tolerating it, and I was choosing to do it instead of allowing my mind to be so bossy and tell me I can't. So looking for ways that we can challenge ourselves, and sometimes challenging ourselves is going to a dance class. I have been going back to yoga. I had taken a break for a while. I can't even, like, when I was reflecting on, like, why did I take a break for a while? It doesn't matter. But in returning to the studio that I recently joined, there's like endless amounts of classes, all kinds of classes, and they have a dance movement class. And my youngest daughter was a competitive dancer. While she's on her holiday break from college, she's been coming to classes with me, and she's like, "Mom, we should go to that one. That one looks so fun for me." And I said to her, I'm like, "Baby, that's because you've been dancing since you were 3. You are very comfortable in your body. I'm going to go. I will go. But I'm going to tell you that actually feels like the hardest thing in the world to me right now. And that's my little divine tap on the shoulder that is saying that I need to do it, because my body is like, I've been very stuck in being so serious, like so tight. And I know that my growth edge is loosening up the physical body to catch up with my elevated state of consciousness. So I love how you're emphasizing playfulness and fun, community, interaction with other people, doing something like even a big adventure. Your Icelandic adventure sounds absolutely amazing. That I have thought this. It is on my bucket list. Like, I will go to Iceland with you one of these days. I've literally already thought about it. I'm like, it might not be for a couple summers because we've got some things, but I am determined to go be a part of that. But we don't have to just wait to go on a retreat to Iceland. We can sign up for something in our local community. We can just get really, really, really silly in our living room and blast some music and start dancing. If you need to start when no one else is looking, start when no one else is looking, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then, I also had sort of like this desire to have a group of women that would just get together and do fun things. And I thought, well, maybe I just need to belong to a book club. That would be sort of like a beginning of something. And I asked a friend if she was in a book club, and she's like, "No, I'm not. Are you?" And I said, "No." And then we looked at each other and like, let's create a book club. So her and I started it, and she recruited a couple of friends. I recruited a couple of friends, and then it sort of organically grew a little more. And now it's 9 or 10 of us, and we've been together now, I think 3 or 4 years. Actually, we started right before COVID, 5 years, right before COVID. And this group of women has actually, we read nonfiction and fiction. And I remember one of the books we read was Breathe by James Nestor. And it in there talked about the breathing during cold exposure and all of that. And we started talking about cold exposure and cold plunging and all that. And it was kind of early on in that craze of cold plunging. And somebody said, we should do it and go to the beach, go to together, and we should go to the beach during the winter, which out here in Delaware is, freezing cold in the winter. And so we did. So now we've been going every year in the winter for 4 years. and we cold plunge in the winter.
Oh, I love
And
that so
just the
much.
silliness and goofiness that goes on around that
Mhm.
is just, it's like, oh my gosh, this is what's like being alive, and just being absolutely goofy and having fun and playing like kids.
Oh,
And
I
we're out there
love
on the beach in our booties and our like swimsuits, and sometimes with like a funny swim cap or like a
it. Yeah.
crazy wool hat and wool mittens, and we're out there doing breathing exercises and music, and people are walking on the beach looking like, what are these women doing? And we're like, whatever,
Oh, I love
whatever.
it. I love
But
it.
I share that just because we can, if we don't have it, like figure out a way to create it. Like
Create
what
it.
ignites you,
Hmm.
what lights you on fire. That's something that's like, oh, I've always wanted to do that. So if we don't have it, create it. Just find somebody else to join you and make it happen. And that doesn't have to be it, but it can be different sort of flavors of that, right?
I love
Of
that so
doing
much.
something
You're
fun
inspiring
and
me. You are. You are inspiring me. I'm like, I'm gonna go out and create my own little group.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think part of stepping forward into the unknown is trusting that the details are already known. So if we're feeling called and led to something, take a leap of faith. You took a leap of faith 6 years ago with your girlfriends, and you started this thing that has grown into something so very beautiful. And it's been growing and evolving over 6 years. And you couldn't have predicted what it would be today. 6 years ago, it started with a nudge. So, yeah, I think also allowing ourselves space to be able to even investigate and feel into some of those longings or those little ideas that pop up. Those little ideas that pop up are spirit led. And if we follow them, we know that it's only going to take us to good places
Yes.
along the
And
way.
that's the courage I was talking about. I think
Hmm.
it's like having the courage to just take that leap of faith of
Yeah.
like just seeing where it goes. And for me, undoing some of the codependency, because codependency for me was all about making sure that I'm doing the right thing so that it is like, because I need approval, I need
Yeah.
recognition. So it needs to be perfect. And also being a former gymnast, I was trained to make
Yeah.
things look perfect,
Oh,
right?
gosh.
It's
Yes.
got to be perfect. So undoing some of that and allowing the messy, and
Hmm.
you and I've talked about this of
Yeah.
like, I'm just going to show up messy and as
Yeah.
myself and like whatever. And trust that it's all going to be okay. And if I'm
Uh-huh.
judged, I'm judged. There's a level of sort of practicing maybe not being liked by everybody.
Hmm. Mhm. Mhm. I love that so much. I actually I'm going to invite you to share with our audience as we're wrapping up this episode just a little bit of your background in being
Yeah.
a gymnast, because one would think that the type of gymnast that you were, and you're going to share that in a minute, would have led to a life of it all just being smooth sailing and perfectionism. And
Hmm.
it was easy because you were trained to perform and you were trained to excel and you were trained to get it right. And it actually did quite the opposite for you, even though you are somebody who, yes, you are an achiever, but share your story with us, because that's definitely one of the early programming pieces for you that you've had to dismantle and shift and become really humble and honest with yourself about.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Kind of say I was the gymnast that lost her balance and
Mm.
regained. It's been a lot of losing the balance throughout the decades. But yeah, so again, born and raised in Iceland, started as a gymnast when I was 6 and was a gymnast until I was 19. So along the way, a lot of training and competitions. I do not regret any of it because, of course, it was a huge part of my life and learned a lot, and um, gave me a great sort of physical foundation in terms of health and fitness. But the achievements of being 3-time Icelandic gymnastics champion at an age 13, 14, and 15 in a very small country where people kind of knew who you were, is I feel like it's a bit of like the child actors, that become celebrities at 12. Like, does that actually set them up for success, or does that actually set them up for struggles later in life? Because I think it distorts a sense of self, a sense of success at an age where you're really kind of like you're changing and you're learning to adult a little bit. And for me, I got a ton of recognition and attention from that. And so I very strongly identified as somebody that achieves. Like my personality and who I am and what my life is about pursuing success in the outward sense, right? And so climbing the corporate ladder became my next thing, right? You know, being a good student and then climbing the corporate ladder and then becoming a health coach, and really struggling with my decision to work part-time as I started building my business as a health coach, because then I wasn't going to be like the health coach, because it wasn't enough to be a mom. And it was like, but very quickly, thankfully, changed the value around having the opportunity to spend time with my kids and structuring my life around them while still pursuing my business on the side. But that was the struggle, sort of like redefining what success looks like. What is success, right? Because for me, it was always the outward. And then even the whole perfectionism around sort of performing gymnastic is like, you're aiming for a 10 and like 10 out of 10. 9 is just not going to cut it.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas you talk to other entrepreneurs and people who are business coaches, they're like, not everything needs to be a 10 or, an A or A plus. Aim for a B. Like just aim for a B. You got to just get your B's out there. It's going to allow you to keep going, whether it's marketing or reaching out to people and doing the work, just, consistency and keep building it. And you're going to have some mistakes and you're not going to do it perfectly. And that's okay. I have had an enormous difficulty with that because a B is just not good enough. Right. And so again, it's like that grace and same sort of a bit of that same momentum around approaching Mount Menopause. Like I'm gonna nail this thing. I'm gonna reach that mountain and I'm just gonna like conquer and I'm gonna be at the top of it, see all the view, and it's gonna be amazing. Yes, it's gonna be a little difficult, of course, here and there, but it's gonna probably be somewhat of a breeze because I prepared myself well and I'm gonna do it, right? And it's great that I had that attitude, but boy, like, was I humbled, right?
Humble, being humble. That was going through my mind as you're saying this. I'm like, oh, she got humbled. Yeah.
Big time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Big time. And it's good. I'm glad that I did. Right?
Oh God. Yeah. It's an amazing gift to be humbled. Yeah. It really, really is. And it allows us to come from grace. It allows us to take an honest look at ourselves and where we are and our inadequacies and to surrender, which is, the whole entire theme of this podcast and why I call it the daily surrender, because it is a daily practice of coming from grace, that grace enabled release for us to say, okay, I got to lay all this down. I'm playing into my old stories, or it's just the programming. That's the ego talking right here. And I don't need to do it this way anymore. I'm going to take action from faith and I'm going to do things a little bit differently. And Linda, I stand witness to you. The audience doesn't know you outside of this conversation necessarily, but I stand witness to you and how much you've been showing up for yourself and the transformation that is the embodiment of who you are. That's, as you said, you're not done. Neither am I. None of us are done until, we're done. But I just want to encourage anybody listening to this conversation with the hope that change is very, very possible when you, number one, believe it. Just believe it and start to take steps in a different direction and do things differently. And you can do that in micro shifts. We don't need to climb Mount Menopause all in one fell swoop because you won't be able to. So
yeah. And you just said like micro shift. It just made me think about that's also the whole thing of like when you feel so depleted or you feel so stuck, you feel like nothing is gonna make you feel any better,
Yeah.
just to find those whatever little places there might be to create some opening. And I think one of the things that you did for me was to reach for sort of the catching myself dropping into fear that it's
Mm.
never going to be, that it's never going to work out, and to trust in spirit and to trust in God.
Yeah.
And the ways in which you have expressed the metaphysical meanings of this stage of life to me and explained so many things to me, that's been a gift, and it's allowed me to drop into love in my heart and catch myself when I'm in that fear. And even just that, those moments of dropping into love and trust and hope, it's like it keeps the candlelight on, it's like it's still there. It might be a little dark, but it's like there's still a little bit something going on, and to just hold on to that and hold on to the beauty of that. And I love the ways in which you have been able to take a massive subject and topic of spirituality and Christianity and distilled it into nuggets that apply to life in such a meaningful way. And specifically as it relates to the process of moving from a, young woman into adulthood and into a post-menopause wise elder, which we're all hoping to be. I think you shine a beautiful light on that path. And it's an angle that not a lot of people are speaking to, at least with all the other things that you have. Like, you have all the wisdom around the health and well-being, but this other lens that you bring to it and the light that you bring to it, I think is a beautiful combination.
Thank
So
you.
I'm grateful to have been a recipient of some of that. Yeah. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Linda. I received that, first of all. And I'll also share that embodiment of that truth that I live, that God gives me the words to share with other people, has come from my own journey up Mount Menopause.
Yeah.
And my understanding of how to get out of fear and get myself into faith and
Yes.
hope. What I have really come to understand is that having hope is not a transactional thing. It's not, I hope I survive Mount Menopause. And, we're gripping onto the steering wheel. Hope is dropping into love and abiding in the frequency of love. We talk about like coherent breath work or getting into our heart and heart coherence. Well, it's getting into coherence with our creator, and our creator, God, is love. So when we can drop into that coherence, that's the hope that we're never alone, we're never abandoned. So even in our hardest moments, in the darkest moments of the journey, if we can use any plethora of tools that are available to us to help us in our conscious state of mind to drop into hope, into love, get into that coherence with that love, that will pull us out of fear. And pulling us out of fear bridges the gap. And we're now no longer giving power to anything outside of one. And I don't know how else to do it, which is why I share what works for me. And I share that with other people because at the root, I believe, of all dis-ease, all the things that show up for us symptomatically, at the very, 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 very root of all of it is an individual person living outside of their divine design. And our divine design is unique to us. Every one of us has full access to the divine, and the divine has the same soul attributes and principles, but God individualizes himself in each and every one of us. So our job here on our human journey is to find out who we are. and to really, really learn how to live in true essence of self. And if we're not doing that, we're not in our divine design. And there's not one exact path, but there is one way, right? And so the paths may look very different for each person, and you might experience and encounter God and God within in different ways. But there is just one way. And a menopause, holy cow, is menopause one huge, loud invitation into that journey of getting to know who you are and where are you out of alignment with your true self. So it's awesome, awesome, awesome for me. And I know it is for you too, doing what you do in your work with women to stand witness. It's like we get to stand witness to someone else's awakening, and we're not the ones awakening them. They're awakening. That awakening is happening themselves. They're figuring out their way, and they're figuring out their way up the mountain. But as you've also beautifully shared in this episode, we can't do it alone. It's not something that we do alone. We're supposed to do it together in sisterhood and community, because when we're together and not alone, we are reflecting God back on one another, and we're encouraging one another, and we're iron sharpening iron, and we're able to sometimes see things in another person that they can't see themselves. And what a blessing to receive that sight from someone else. So yeah, it's just, I love what we do, Linda. I really do. And I wish that our mothers had women like us having these conversations, and we get to alchemize a lot of what they experienced by being the women who are stepping forward bravely and boldly, and not just doing this work in the world for other people, but really doing it for ourselves. And our own work that we do on ourselves is the work that blesses the world. And I want every woman listening to that to really let that sink in for yourself, because a lot of women feel very responsible for helping. We're created to be helpers and givers and fixers, and that's a beautiful part of our femininity. But the best way that we can help anybody else or help this world or make this world a better place is for us to go within, learn to love ourselves, learn to really embrace who we are, and to be who we are in this world. So I have one more question for you before we wrap up this episode.
Yeah.
If menopause is the initiation, who is that woman, Linda, who is waiting on the other side? Who's that woman?
Mm. Well, first thing that comes to mind is an embodied woman, right? She owns and embraces all of that she is, warts and all, and is embraces her wholeness, embodiment, and she is recognizing the lived experience and wisdom that she's acquired along the way, that she has gained through her experience, trial and errors and tribulations and all of it, the joys and the hard times, to be able to turn around and distill that wisdom and support other women in, whether it's family or other people, or whether doing it from a place of profession or not. I think that these women that come to that place, they have so much to give, because there's just a lot of wisdom, and I aspire to get there. I don't think that I'm fully there. I have so much more to experience, but that is the piece that keeps, it's part of the hope. It's part of this sort of light at the end of the tunnel in a way, although it's not the end. But this, like, that is like what we're aspiring to become, because we can all think of a woman who's in her 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s right now, who has had an impact on our life because of her wisdom, because of her courage, because of her ability to be grounded in all of who she is, with all that she got. And that it's not about adorning ourselves with feathers and diamonds and glitter, right? It's about owning all of who we are and all of who God created us to be, and to be content with that. And from that place, I think people will feel it and sense it,
Oh,
that
yeah.
there's some depth to be shared. And yeah,
Oh,
celebrate that.
absolutely. That is so beautifully stated. So beautifully stated. And of course, people will feel it because that's the embodied woman. And the embodied woman carries a frequency. And it
Yes,
is a frequency of love.
it is the
It's
frequency of love for others and
mhm.
for
For
self.
self, yes. And that
And
love for others always follows love for self.
right,
Always. Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And there was one other thing that it just came to me, and well done, little brain fart. Um,
Oh, that's called a menopausal brain fart.
yes, exactly.
They're real.
Um, so one of the things that I have been thinking about in my journey is that people are thinking a lot about their elderly parents, and you hear about people who lose their parents, and the children are having to go to the homes and take care of all the things, right? And what a burden it is when parents have not taken the time to go through all their stuff and to pare down and to sort through and to process whatever, so that when they fall away, that the remaining material things that are left don't leave a huge amount of burden on the children, that they can actually go through a sort of pared down amount of stuff that they're grieving, but they can also appreciate what's there without feeling completely overburdened if the parents have left just nothing processed and nothing that's been sorted. So I feel like it's like a level of cleaning house that once we get up into the ages of like, I don't want to leave that kind of stuff for my kids. And I think that the emotional realm of that is us cleaning our own house so that we can pass on
Oh,
something more beautiful to the next generation. Right. So I feel like it's like a dual thing. As we grow older, our responsibility to the following generations is to do a level of cleaning house, both material
I
on
love
the
it.
material plane, but also on the emotional plane, because the more we can do our work
Yeah.
emotionally, the more we're making the rest of our lives with less baggage in the
Mm-hmm.
backpack, right? And we can have more joy and more health,
Mm-hmm.
but we're also perhaps making a generational shift
Oh, we are. We
for the
absolutely are.
generation that's to come, that
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna try to stop some of the dysfunction
Yeah.
that we've been carrying from our previous generations, right? So I think again, like that is just something that I I think we should all aspire to cleaning house on both fronts.
I love that. The work we do on ourselves is the work our children don't have to do on themselves, right? So if we don't do it, if we don't go after it, our children will have to. So the burdens that we carry because of the chains that we carry, are we passing that on or not? That's a beautiful analogy. I love that. Thank you so much. Oh, Linda, this has been such an awesome conversation. I
Thank
really,
you.
really, really thank you for entering into this conversation with me and for sharing with women. Any women who are listening to this episode, my challenge to you is not only to take all of the things that Linda and I have shared to heart and really start taking radical responsibility for your own journey up Mount Menopause, but can you share this episode with a sister, with a girlfriend, with another woman who is climbing Mount Menopause? It's a valuable conversation, and more women need to hear it. We would love to hear your feedback. So drop any feedback in the comments for this episode. You can reach Linda. Linda, you are on Instagram, but not heavily because you know that social media is quite the drain, right?
Had to take a little break from that.
Yeah.
That became a part of the ledge,
Yep. Yep.
sitting in quiet.
Oh, I hear you. I have
Yeah.
done the same, and it is really, really a mixed bag. But I will drop in the show notes links to your program, your coaching, and your amazing retreat. Is the registration open for this summer's retreat yet?
Yeah, and it's actually almost full. We've got 3 spots open.
Oh my gosh. Okay, ladies, anyone listening to this, if you're feeling a little tug,
Yeah.
you might be in Iceland this summer with Linda and her sister climbing up their own metaphorical menopause. So thank you,
Yeah.
ladies, so much for listening here today. And thank you, Linda, for being such a beautiful, amazing guest.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the talk.
Thank you for joining me on the Daily Surrender. If today's episode spoke to you, I'd love to hear your reflections. Send me a message, share this with a friend, or leave a review. Remember, true healing and freedom come when we let go, surrender, and trust that God's way is so much better than our way. Until next time, my friends, keep surrendering, keep rising, and keep walking in peace.